but to move to Horseshoe Bay, which also packed episode full of drama. I feel like we should start with Nace Watch first because they were all in and up in this episode. I did appreciate, I know we talked about this in our spoiler free review, but I did appreciate the time jump because I think it gave Nancy's yearning and Ace's confusion even more emotional resonance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, we have watched the season 3 finale pretty recently, but for the fans, it's been 400 days since they've seen that. So the fact that we managed to get that to translate into the script or the content itself, because the time jump, the 5 week time jump, that scene where Nancy and Ace caught up with each other again for the first time, the emotion in Kennedy's face, the like yearning look in Ace's face, it was beautiful, and I don't think we would have been able to achieve that without some sort of time jump. And this show doesn't do time jumps; it all takes place in like the same day, for goodness sake. So it was nice to finally be on that end of it and see, because I feel like that really benefited the storyline because you could just feel the emotion in that moment.
I think it was the perfect amount of time too, because it was still raw enough for both of
Mm-hmm.
them, but it was still like a significant chunk of time where they've lived with it a little bit. So yeah, I appreciate it because it felt like, I know we talked about this too, but the time jump I think benefited the storytelling because enough had changed to where they're all in different places from where we
Mm-hmm.
last left them. So it felt like a new era.
It did, and it worked really well for the story that they wanted to tell, because you also could see how sharp everyone is in their new lives. Like, or well, everyone but Nancy. Nancy's struggling, but you know she would be because she's carrying the weight of not being able to be with Ace. But also, for some reason, we've moved into Icarus Hall, and
Choices.
now
We all make choices.
and I don't see how saving this ferret is going to make a dent in any type of property tax.
Chunky Velez.
But she's got bills. She's living on her own now. She's trying to figure it out and figure out how to run an investigation agency, which is fun to see, as her fathers also bring her breakfast because they know she's not eating.
I love that scene. Like I say all the time, Carson and Ryan, it's a great double act. And this was a much more clever expositional device than whatever the George monologue was last season. They got so much information across. It was so quirky in the way that only Carson and Ryan could be. But then Nancy just had that moment where she broke and then just spilled her guts in those 30 seconds, caught us right up to date on everything that went down during the 5 week time jump. Much appreciated, but what a scene.
Natural.
So funny in it though. She's like, I'm not upset. Like, do I sound like I'm upset? I'm not upset. And I was like, okay, sure.
Yourself, girl. But circling back to that scene with Nancy and Ace at the claw, it was just like poetic that they would be at the claw. She's standing where he used to stand.
Mm-hmm.
The best parent trapped us line. It was also charged in like, how do you can't look away from that scene. Like there's just, even though it was a simple scene, like there's so much writing on that. Any interaction that they have this season, there's just so much so much at stake, so much to look for. So I love that scene where she's like, I have no errands.
Nace Watch all started between the three of us as something so subtle because we were looking at for all the signs. And I feel like we should just retire the idea of Nace Watch now because Nace is there. We don't need to watch for it. We don't need to look for it. It is there. What was the metaphor I used last week? The elephant in the room is stampeding all over the season. And they only had like three one-on-one scenes in the episode. And you felt every single one of them. I am so excited for what they're going to give us this season because if it's anything like that, all in for it.
I know, and they had different flavors. So the first one, the reunion scene, is so awkward, like in the best way, and earnest. It's really earnest, especially with Ace, who's just like, I just, can we be friends? I just really want to be friends. Can we get to the friend part? Like, I'm so sorry for making you uncomfortable. I was like, she's not uncomfortable. She's just lying to you, but she's not uncomfortable. And then when they reunite again, after he had been jailed, which we'll talk about that because that wasn't fair. And he comes to the lovers' vigil because he doesn't want to be home alone. Like, okay, sir, right. that's why we came down to the archives where Nancy is instead of just staying up and with everybody else.
When he yelled at everybody to get out of there, I was like, who is this Ace? Where has he been? He's been pissed for almost a month and a half because he can't have his girl, and he's just gonna let them all know. I love when Ace gets to break type and he gets to be a little sassier, do whatever he needs to do. Like, I don't think we talked enough about that particular moment in the scene before Nancy and Ace get all up in each other's faces. Him yelling at all those people to get out. Okay, more of that.
It was very like, oh, we see you. We see you. The
Let
whistle
it
at the door
out.
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was assertive.
He was, and Nancy was like, "Oh, okay, I feel you. I'm there." Like, we're like, we can see you, Nancy.
But the rest of that scene, because we had seen the photo, it was an exclusive photo release, and I can't remember if we alluded to this in the spoiler-free review, but I know we talked about it together. The full scene makes that photo, I don't even know what it makes it look like a preschool show or something, because what we ended up getting, that was good stuff. That's what we've been waiting for.
And it's only the tip of the iceberg too. Like, I didn't think it could get even better, but that scene is so solid. Like, Nancy, girl, you said you want to keep the curse a secret, but you're the one who keeps moving closer to Ace. And then their voices dip and we're whispering, and it's like you can't look away from the TV. You're like, is this the moment? Are we gonna do it? Are we gonna make are we gonna get too close? And they did, and then shatter. And now she got a bloody palm.
He hid the little glass bottle inside of a manila folder. That man has spent way too much time with you, Nancy. He's going to look at it like, she's so unserious sometimes. If she tries to deny that it's not her handwriting, and I'm like, it's got blood on it, Nancy. He watched you bleed.
And the way he knew what her handwriting looked like, that was such a subtle, I love that so much.
But like, the fact that that's not even the most incriminating thing about the whole thing, like the blood, the fact that he watched her put the thing inside of the folder.
He watched you be awkward about it, so clearly you didn't want him to see what was on the note. It's yours, Bill. Like, and he knows it is. And speaking of assertiveness, though, again, when he put the dots together and it was like bang, bang, bang on the door, and it's, I know you have feelings for me, looks her up and down. I was like, they've really not holding back. They said fire and spice for all of their scenes. And again, the whispering, he was out of breath too. I was like, we ran? Like, I'm sure we could have drove, but it sounds like you ran all the way to Chris Hall.
Well, I mean, that's deep in the woods. Who knows how you may have to park in the forest.
We don't know the geography. But no, I hate it when a season premiere cools things down instantly after a fiery season finale. This did not have any time for that. I'm sure we'll cool off at some point, but what a way to throw us back into the season. What a way to throw us back into Nace. Yeah, that final scene and the fact that she had to tell him that they were cursed, it's all out in the open. Or my biggest gripe was that this great detective felt like she had to lie and then was doing the worst job imaginable with all of the lies. It's out in the open. I hope they don't try to take it back or something. But like, I love that finale. I love that ending sequence so much, and it got me even more excited for the next episode.
To your point, and I know we had talked about this together, that we're glad that they brought up the curse. Like, I didn't need them to break the curse in the first episode, but I also didn't need them to force Nancy to keep holding on to this on her own. I don't think I expected her to tell Ace. At the very minimum, I wanted her to tell someone, like someone else, because I don't think she doesn't told the group, right?
No, just her dad's. She's leaned on her father's,
and now Ace. So I'm like you said, I'm glad we have some movement here. We're not just going to be like left until like mid-season for her to be like, hey, guess what? We're cursed. So I'm glad the pacing is where it needs to be. I'm sure, I mean, we'll, as the show always does and as other shows do, like 2 steps forward, a step back. Like, it's not going to be easy. But yeah, I'm glad this is where we are. And where we leave him, he doesn't even know the full rules. He doesn't even know what that means, that we're cursed. But I hope you're right. I hope we don't watch episode 2 and he's like, cursed, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, cursed, not really cursed, just like, we're cursed.
I
But
don't.
I don't think it will because there's too much weirdness. Like all the glass breaking when they kiss. Like
Mhm.
he's been, like I said, he's been hanging around Nancy too long to not like have his own instincts.
Well, and he's been
Mhm.
annoying Nick because
Yeah.
because Nick was like, look, I had my heart broken too before, but like he won't stop talking about his barometer breaking. Like I don't know what's going on, but that's what's going on there. So I think Ace has been trying to put it together. These 5 weeks for him, I think have been confidence builders because when we left him in the season 3 finale, he was like, I'm not like the other men you've dated. And, I work at the morgue now, so I feel very solid. And I was like, you could still feel solid even not working at the morgue, Ace. But now, I don't know. Based on how we've seen him in the season 4 premiere, I guess the morgue job really did help his confidence
Mhm.
and his self esteem because he is there. He's authoritative, he's assertive, and he's getting his girl. So I don't think her trying to walk it back is going to work out for her if she does that.
Mm-mm. I'm excited to find out the rules because it's still like, for me at least, seeing them that close, I'm so concerned.
Hmm.
I'm like, prom rules, get away. I'm like, get away from each other. I'm scared.
They're not leaving enough room for the Holy Ghost and his disciples. But no.
Like I'm scared. I'm like, what does acting on your feelings mean? Because you were acting on them. I don't know. I was scared.
Mhm.
I don't think that is enough to like make the curse happen. If that, I don't think it's gonna happen. I won't even put it in the universe. But like as a viewer, that's really good stakes to have in the back of your
Yeah.
mind to be like concerned anytime they're in a room together.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and especially the fact that Nancy got some happy time with him in that dream, and she didn't know when it could strike. And isn't I think that came across from what Temperance told her, in that it could strike at any moment. They could have 5 wonderful years together, and it could strike then. He could get knocked down by a car. He could be stricken with an illness. It could happen 60 years when they're together. It's the fear of not knowing when it could happen.
Not you
I
saying 60 years, Michael. That just broke my heart. To see
um,
them get together and then at 60, Nancy's like, oh no, the curse is back.
but it's made us feel all of this. That's how very successful it was. Um, and the fact that the great detective like Nancy Drew won't let it happen until she can solve this problem. Beautiful, beautiful character moments. Yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes. Honestly, I've never been more on board the show than after the season 4 premiere. I'm so glad I got to watch it a second time because I feel like I just doubled down on everything I was feeling after the first.
Shall we talk about Tristan now that we can?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he is lovely. I
Right?
like our lobster man. Like he's I don't really know. We don't really know him, but from what we've seen in the premiere, I just think he's gonna be sweet. Probably a little devilish later. We'll see. I just feel like you can't be raised by the classes and be like a super kind heart, but you never know.
I'm curious to see if he knows what his parents are up to.
Mm.
Mm,
That's a question I have. But yeah, to me, he's like a non-threat,
yeah.
right? Like it'll just be like a fun side thing when Nancy and Ace can't be together. But we don't know what this is gonna look like as a quote love triangle, love interest, whatever. Like we just
Mm-hmm.
don't know what it's gonna be like. I could be eating my words. It could be exactly what we think it's gonna be, and Nancy's gonna be with him. Who knows? But I'm open to it.
Yeah,
He
it's just giving option.
Yeah, and he does seem nice, and it does make you wonder if this could be like a Mateo situation in Superman at Lois. Like he doesn't know, and then he will find out, and then he becomes the threat or whatever. Because like end of the day, we know where we're ending this show. Nancy and Ace are getting together, and it's not, and it's the only thing keeping them apart will be the curse. But will the people who come into their lives in the time in between be friends, be foes? Tristan seems really friendly. He seems really nice. I recognize the actor, so I knew the moment he walked into the claw for that mini cameo, I was like, that's him. That's what we're getting. And then lo and behold, she ran up to him later and was like, fish guy. And so their chemistries are right from the beginning. I like it. We're going to have to get used to it, I think, depending on where we go from here, because like I do believe Nace will cool off at some point so that we can have a bit of fun in the present before we start worrying about the future. Um, but
I'm
yeah, I
gonna make
like
a
where we're at.
I'm gonna make a bold prediction. But first, before I make the bold prediction, I want to circle back to the trailer and that moment where we see a young man like running into a portal. Was
Mm-hmm.
that him, or do we still not know if that was somebody else?
Unclear. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if it's him. I mean, it helps that his family is aware of the supernatural. So if he does become a part of Nancy's life in a significant way, him being pulled into a case makes sense.
Hmm.
Okay, so my bold prediction is that I think in some way he's going to play an important role in Nancy and Ace getting together.
Hmm.
I don't know how. Don't have that prediction. Haven't thought that far ahead. But I do
Well,
think he's going to serve. I guess maybe not. I think. I hope that he will serve a purpose other than just being another like layover roadblock.
Hmm.
I think so. The way to quickly get out of that relationship when it's time to put Nace together would be to do pull from your idea, Reed. He knows exactly what they need to break the curse, and it is in his parents' collection. He's just not saying anything because he's interested in Nancy. Moral dilemma of the heart. Do you let her separate from the man that she has clearly wanted to be with? Or do you stay quiet about it because you want to be with her? If they wanted to
Yeah,
give
don't
him
tell
that
Nancy
plot,
though, because she's not gonna.
mm-mm.
From oh my God, my favorite moment that I forgot about in the premiere was when Nancy finds out about the glasses. Glasses is such a weird word to say. And Ryan is like, promise me you won't go. Nancy's just doesn't say anything. In the next scene, we see her knocking on the door. Loved it. That's our girl.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's her in a nutshell. And I know you said to us off pod last week that another show might have been like really on the nose about, oh, I'm not going anywhere or whatever. Watching it again after you said that, I know exactly what you mean. It just lingered there. She had no thoughts. And then just the quick cut, knock, 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 knock. Brilliant.
She had
That's it.
thoughts. The thought was keep your face neutral, but I'm not listening to this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like she's like, do you know who I am?
Of course, she's gonna get involved. Speaking of the glasses, though, because of how that conversation even goes down between her and Ryan, it makes sense for Ryan to just accept his car back when things didn't work out for the glasses. But I'm also like, Ryan, you've been around far too long around the supernatural things to not at least be like, should I scan the car first? Because
Mhm.
they just gave they were like, yeah, you can have your cars like Ryan. Clearly, that's not going to work out in your favor. And lo and behold, talisman on top of the
But
engine.
that whole thing goes back to I feel like I've said this before. I can't remember what season, maybe every season, but like don't withhold information from Nancy.
Mm.
Mhm.
They spent the whole episode trying not to tell her about it. And you can tell like her aggravation when she's finding out and she's like, how many times have I told you guys just to tell me? And I was the same way. I was like, oh my God, you guys, you just have to tell her because she's can be helpful.
Yeah.
And she will get to the bottom of it. And I think that's what Ryan's worried about because you know how she commits to things, even and like sometimes against her own will. She will commit to things and figure it out for the people. But I think Ryan's very terrified of how dangerous the glasses are, and he doesn't want to put her or Bess in harm's way. Speaking of Bess,
Understandable.
yeah, exactly. Speaking of Bess, I like that she's like entrepreneurial and found herself. Like this is what she deserves, and like people are seeing her as like a kind of like a force to be reckoned with in the magical world. But I do hope that the witchy stuff isn't one and done, and that we're just like moving on from that era now, because I feel like the glasses wouldn't be as big a threat if Bess was able to unleash her full power on them, if you know what I mean. I hope it's not we've just moved on from that. Like again, to go back to Smallville had one season where Lana became a witch for who knows what, and then we never talked about it again after that. Hope this isn't the same with Bess. Like she is a force to be reckoned with, and like from a like powers physicality standpoint, she is the biggest force to be reckoned with on that team. I hope we get to use that since it's the final season one more time, because I don't think season 3 really made the most of it because she was always second best when it came to temperance. Well, now she's the best. Let's see more of that.
I think we will. I think for the start, though, we might just end up with knowledge base. One of the
Mhm.
things that I really appreciated about this episode was the competence from all of the Drew crew, especially George and Bess when talking to Nancy about trying to solve the mystery behind where the corpses went. And they're both weighing in. And then Bess was explaining certain things. She's like, well, there's this culture in this, so you could do this here. But that's probably
Mhm.
not what's going on Hershey Bay. I was like, oh yes, Encyclopedia Bess. I really
Speaking of the
enjoy
three
it.
girls, there was that scene where they're talking um in the employee space in the claw. They're on the little bench. Powerpuff Girls coded. George had green on, Nancy had blue, and I think Beth had pink. Maybe I'm not getting the colors right. But the first thing I thought when I saw that scene, and I know we'd seen the pictures, I think they released a photo of that scene, but I was like, the live action Powerpuff Girls are right in front of us.
CW missed an opportunity.
They did, but we have them at least in this show. They were super powerful this episode. All three of them just really, really great in solving this case. All the Drew crew were actually. It just was nice to see everyone have their strengths and just
And Nick's swagger, just to see him be happy and confident. I was like, oh, finally. Love that for him.
The walk down the main street as he's competently giving like a little infomercial for the Lovers Vigil. We're like,
and everyone else was so awkward.
Yeah. Bless Ace and his little scrubs.
Oh,
he was adorable. And like he was giving, I have to do this because I'm in the morgue, but I'm gonna do like this ad for them. Nick was like, I'm Nick Nickerson. And I am so excited for the Lovers Vigil. And he's just walking. I was like, everybody in town's in love with you, Nick. Everyone.
And then you had Bess, who was doing a solid job at performing, but then Nancy was super overperforming, and then George just did not care whatsoever. And a great way of catching us up with where everyone was in life, but also just maintaining who they are as people. Love that.
I know, because we're Horseshoe Bay Bagels, apparently.
Yeah, love that.
Love it. Is there needs to be a bagel shop now?
Yeah,
it does.
Horseshoe bagels.
Fingers crossed. I feel like that has to come up. Like she has to have a partnership with the bagel shop in town. It's like branding for the historical society.
And then it's haunted.
Season 5 plot right there.
I mean, Kennedy did say that there are standalone episodes. That's how we get the spiders, according to Kennedy. That's kind of a standalone episode.
Tell me about that episode in advance, please.
Prepare yourself for that.
What else happened? Oh, just to have a little Drewson corner for those like me who thrive whenever they get scenes. They were cute this episode. Really appreciate the friendship. Someone on Twitter tweeted that it's their Platanker era, and I'm now internalizing that and getting ready for at least a juice box worth of meals. And Anne Kennedy has said it's their BFF era. So like I'm very happy to get some scenes. I was unsure how they were going to handle that as we're in the final season. And we're just investigating and sipping coffee unbothered. So it was great.
I love that for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really do. I really do.
So much
agreed. Fun. Yeah, I feel like even it's funny that they didn't plan this as the final season, because that feels like a culmination of the relationship. This is where we wanted them to get to, and to just like I said, that scene felt like it belonged in season 1. It was absolutely lovely, and I hope we get to see more of them. And I'm really excited about the fact that Kennedy was able to tease that, because one of my biggest issues with the way the Fanson relationship played out was that Nick and George were automatically sucked out of a lot of the group storyline, so you didn't get to see an awful lot of that group dynamic, whereas now we get to mix it up again. I hope we get to see more scenes between George and Bess, for example, even George and Ace, who don't spend an awful lot of time together, but of course getting the gift of like Nick and Nancy again, just like season 1. That felt like a real throwback, and that scene felt like it could have belonged in any of the first 2 seasons, which was a nice little throwback as well.
Without the angst.
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoyed their romance and relationship, but like we felt like every season we were just like, are we still dealing with the aftermath of the breakup? Are we done? Can we be done? I love them, but let's be done.
And it just does feel like such a natural progression for their friendship, where like maybe group settings can be a little awkward because there's, stuff going on with Nancy and Ace. There's still stuff going on with George and Nick, but like at the center, there's Nancy and George who are able to come together and just be normal together and have a nice, friendly time together.
Mm.
Yeah.
Feels like a full circle moment.
It does. And they're able to like, not poke fun, but it was cute when Nancy was like, so you're good at this, when it came to the ad, or when Nick and Bess were looking at each other when Tristan was clearly looking at Nancy and then just left. And those two were like, so Nancy, Tristan, like you did not see it. Like, I guess not. But I do enjoy the friendships at the core of this too. And that Fanson got some closure. So perhaps their friendship will be worked on, since they got to clear the air about what had happened with Nick selling the ring and George getting it to express her feelings about how she had thought maybe one day he'd ask her again. But I will say, if that was the thought, I don't understand why they were broken up. But I don't know if that means fans can anticipate a reunion. It felt, at least right now, pretty final. Like Nick seems like he wants to move forward, and George is giving him all the blessings in the world to try his hand at dating someone else in town. I don't know, but it was a really good, mature scene for the both of them.
I feel like I can foresee like a late season reunion build up. Because Kennedy also did say, I don't remember which interview it was. She did a lot of interviews in the past few days. That they didn't know going into the season that it was the final season. They didn't find out until like 8 or 9 when they were filming. So I think we should probably look out toward that part of the season where things are being rearranged or set up for the grand finale.
Okay, well, hope it's seated well then. That makes sense for where they are. Like,
she also said that the writers were, I mean, you don't write a new season of a show and not look out your window to see what's happening at the CW. Like she said, like they knew. Thankfully, they saw the writing on the wall and they didn't ignore it. So I think they were building toward a place where, because they were lucky enough to get this season at all, I feel like, that they knew they had to go out with a bang. So, but I think, once you find out for sure, you're like, okay, let's really do this for real this time. This is it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing those turns at the end, because we saw them with some other shows when they finally got word that it was their final season. They're like, oh wait.
Or there's some shows that knew their final season was coming up and did absolutely nothing with it.
La 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 la, can't hear
you. So far so good for Nace.
Yeah, it feels like when we answered the question, like I described the season in 3 words, one of mine was mature. Like this feels like a natural progression of where we were in season 1. I mean, I think we all would have watched, all the fans would have watched the show as long as it could have been on 6, 7 seasons. We would have been on board, even just 5. Because I think 4 seasons is, while it's a good chunk of a series, it's still, I mean, we want to spend more time with them. But where the season began, it does feel a little bit more mature. They're a little bit more settled into where they can go as young adults. So it very much is giving finality.
Yeah. And off your point, I think that I agree, 4 is too soon for shows like this to end, because back in the days of the teen shows, or even the day of modern shows, season 4 sometimes is either the season that completely reinvents the show, or the one that feels like a return to form after the darker season 3 didn't pay off. Nace feels somewhere in between the both of them. It feels like it's kind of reinvented itself by finally taking that time jump. It's definitely got revival qualities to it, but on the other hand, it feels a bit like a return to form. And from seasons 1 and 2, the standard feels like it's back there again. Season 3 was still great. I don't want anyone to think I'm shading season 3, but this just feels more in line with what we were learning in season 1 and 2. So if it's going to go out, I'm happy for it to go out with this standard, because I have never been more excited about this show.
Yeah, I think, if we were living in a world in which they would have a path towards renewal, they probably had 1 or 2 more seasons in the tank. It just feels like she wouldn't have gotten her investigation agency in the final season, right? Like that we would have another season or 2 to flesh that out, to push it forward, to really have her become the investigator of Horseshoe Bay in a very solid and grown-up way. And I feel like we're in the middle of that journey, but I appreciate what they're going to give us in season 4, because I feel like everybody has, to use a phrase from The Flash, leveled up. I mean, we really are, we are in our grown era. Everybody is, like, everybody feels like they're on a new path in life, and we've gotten through a lot of the trauma and done a lot of the healing. I'm happy for George, where George is at. Like, she's in a new growth path that's scary for her, but it's all about like what she wants to do, like becoming a lawyer. She's a law student. She's trying to have confidence. I love the conversation between her and Carson, where he said, she just has to switch superpowers. Because she had to be a woman who could juggle a lot of plates, because she was raising her siblings, and she was running a restaurant, and she was taking care of her mom, and she was investigating things. Like, she had a lot on her plate. And now he's like, you have less of that. And so you just have to figure out a way to not get in your own way and to accept or to perceive what's going on around you, in the sense like the judge would not have spent all that time correcting your paper if he didn't see promise in you, because judges don't have a lot of time and he wouldn't waste his.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great way of putting it, as being a superhero, because George has always had to make the best of the situation that she's been in, and she's done a wonderful job at it. But even then, that extended to Odette and everything going on with the big bads in the town. She's always had to like fight for things, whereas now she has time to focus on herself. And I hope this is a season of growth for George, and that she gets to do what she wants to do. Of course, as we saw in the premiere, she's going to have to fight for this, but she's good at this. She has potential, and she's finally going to get some time to just focus on who she wants to be. And I think that's, again, that kind of feels like a full circle moment for a final season as well.
I feel like we're also doing this better than we did Bess and the Powers thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
George is going to have to work for a career where you have to retain a lot of knowledge. Like lawyer and doctor, two different fields, but same concept. It's not really about how smart you are. It's about how much you know and how much you can use that knowledge to help people.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the Bess with the witchy powers was a little underdeveloped for my liking. But speaking of Bess and George, you know, I love how like kind of like concise the Drew crew is now. They're so cohesive. Like that scene when Nace was talking to the new police chief and they needed to see the evidence, and she kind of gave them the nudge. And Bess whipped the lid off the arm, was like, the ice cream sandwiches I ordered. And then George like spun around and took the photo, and the two of them walked out, and Nancy just followed with that little smirk. One of my favorite Drew crew scenes ever. They're just such a unit, and that was just wonderful way to open season 4.
Okay, wait, real quick. We couldn't talk about her last week, but how do we feel about the new police chief?
Sabrina, tell us.
I don't like Miss Ma'am. Like I don't. I know she is giving a little something different than the other like authority figures for law enforcement in Horseshoe Bay. What was it? I don't remember the chief's name from season 1, but he wasn't about the Drew crew investigating anything. Tamara was the same, to the point where he was getting on my nerves. Of course, you know I love Stan and Wish Park was here, but he's no longer here. And then I don't know the sheriff's name, but her being like, we'll just make each other better. And like, she doesn't know you, but you know her. You're giving her information about herself, and you have not given like information about you. She's very like, I don't know. It was her personality type. I feel like, you know, she wants to be buddy, kumbaya, let's share knowledge, but also we want to be like sparring mentally. It seemed like this is not a game. Ace is in jail, and that is Nancy's friend / boyfriend. And so the idea that like she's just gonna trade information with you and you're both gonna brainstorm what's happening, like her friend is in jail, like, and she's trying to tell you about his character, and you just want to talk about how both of you are investigators, and it's gonna be so fun working with each other and trying to, I guess, one up one another. It's solid. Like, it's gonna do wonders for Nancy's character and for the storyline. I personally dislike it. This is a subjective opinion, not an objective one. Objectively, she's going to serve the plot well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And she's a bit cartoonish. That's all I really have to say. I like the fact she found out right away, and that she was proven wrong, and that she had to stop and think, maybe I should listen to people more.
I did like that too.
Yeah, again, we're quickly getting things out of the way. We're subverting expectations. This is what this show does. But she is oddly cartoonish for a relatively serious show.
Yeah.
Well, I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the scene where Nancy kicks the gate in at the police station. She's like, this is my house. I live here.
Yes. And was the last week when you had mentioned her being a menace. That's my first thought. Just kicks the door right on open.
Well, looking them in the eyes too, kicking the door open, like, you know, can't tell me anything.
It's just so lovely. Again, perfection for a season premiere. And we haven't even we've talked about so much, and we haven't even talked about the mystery yet. That's how much is in this episode. So like the central mystery is the same one that we left off with the bodies being missing from the cemetery. I wanted to ask you guys, do we think it is actually zombies, or do we think that it's controlled corpses and someone is doing something to the town to, I guess, something evil?
I have no idea. I have no theories, I don't think.
It's still very fresh, but I do feel like maybe the bodies element might be dropped now because the zombies were infected by some kind of black goo or something, which is now heading towards the reservoir. So is it going to create some different supernatural thing next week? It feels like something is pulling the strings. We just don't know what or where it came from. I feel like the bodies was just the beginning of it.
Mm. But their age was interesting to me. They all died before 30. That seemed to be
there was a
important.
mystery there. Yeah.
I'm like, is it part of a spell? Are we going to learn about warlocks? Like, what is happening? I do love that it's going to be I guess it's a season long mystery with different standalones that probably can connect or not connect. I don't know, but I am intrigued by it because I feel like I'm much more interested in this than I was in whatever Temperance had going on.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
Yeah, more of a mystery this time. And it kind of keeps it simple, and I like that better.
Yes, we'll have to keep track of this mystery, actually, because it seems like there'll be different parts to it, moving parts that we'll have to, like, the audience may have to be, our listeners may have to be like, y'all, that happened 3 episodes ago, and this is the information right here that you're missing in this conversation. We'll be like, thank you.
I know, I got so confused about it because in between watching this premiere screener and then watching the premiere, I had also watched 10 episodes of Manifest. And I was having trouble. I was misremembering what happened in each one. Not that there are similar things, but there are similar things that I was like, wait, did that happen in Answer 2? Or is that in Man? Like, I get mixed up so often. Remember last year, I was like, oh, wait, no, that happened in Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday and the Winchesters. That's right.
Okay, I think, well, that's it then. And I'm sorry, I'm about to put you on the spot, but I didn't put this on the outline. We don't have a toast section, but I figure what better way to kick off season 4 than you to Stan Kennedy for in the toast.
I love Kennedy. I love her. Toast to Kennedy. Do I have anything specific I need to say about Kennedy other than she continues to be amazing and carrying this network on her back as it dies a slow death?
I think that's the perfect way to toast her. You did it.
You ain't getting any higher praise than that.
No. So yes, toast to Kennedy.
I can't imagine.
Yes.
We love you.